grief that many of us are actually able to conceal very, very easily. And there is uncertainty, of course, for so many of us about tomorrow, about the health, the safety of our children, our families. We do not know who we are going to meet and if we ourselves are going to contract the disease. And this is about the ability to just live and to be able to give up the lives that we all once knew. This has resulted actually in much higher rates, and you've probably heard numerous speakers saying this, of depression, anxiety, alcohol abuse, drug abuse, and even suicides. But where it has catastrophically affected us has been in the range of our mental health and our behavioral health. And I have just, in the interest of time, just put 3 tips each together, 3 for leadership, 3 for teams, and 3 for individuals. And I want to very quickly just share this with you. So on sharing my slides, first, how organizations can support their people and foster a psychologically safe environment. So the first thing, and this might sound very different to anything that you've heard out there, but don't encourage denial. And why do we say that? Because denial is the first stage of psychological grief. We feel comfort when we are in denial. If any of you have ever heard or read the great, Klaes Janssen, who is this social psychologist, and he's talked about the 4-room apartment, you will notice that we go from the room of contentment into the room of denial, and then into the room of confusion, and then back into the room of renewal. So right now, many of us are in the room of denial. But denial protects people from very painful emotions. But the truth is that it is unhealthy. It's a comfort zone where nothing ever grows. And we have got to be able to be productive enough to make sure that our people and our teams don't remain in that room. Now, as leaders, I remember going to PwC just at the beginning of when the pandemic started. I remember delivering this amazing presentation to them about 9/11, about this guy, Jimmy Dunn, who worked for Sandler O'Neill, and how when the Twin Towers came down, he rounded up his employees. They lost everything from a pen to a computer to their files. Everything went down in the rubble. But he motivated his staff, and he came out with this: we'll put on our Brooks Brothers suits and we will get out there and we are going to win this thing. And true enough, on the first anniversary, he was able to close 59 new deals and turn over more than 15 billion worth of business. But he's managed to do that. But what we have got to remember is that not all of us are these great, passionate leaders who are willing to go out there and embrace things and say, you know what, I can make everything great and I can make things go away. We have got to be compassionate for others and to think that they are going through emotions very different from ourselves. The second thing we need to do is to let people grieve. We have got to make it acceptable for people to miss what they have had. It is an important part of the grieving process. It's all too easy to assume that if your colleagues and their families all look very happy, very healthy when you see them virtually, and that there is no problem. But we need to look a little deeper. It's a sure bet that members of your team and other people around you are grieving on very different levels, but it's concealed grief. It's like the masks that we wear. And we have got to be really careful about it. So to give you one very quick example, you might have heard people say on virtual meetings, I'm so happy that I'm not commuting anymore. It's so great. But actually, have you thought of the mom who's seated right there thinking, I have 3 or 4 children, and for me, that commute just gave me that me time. I was so happy to be on that train alone, reading, doing my own thing, listening to my own music, doing my meditation. So we have to be conscious of our words and everything that we say. When we talk about empathy and when we say, please do not encourage pity parties. What do we mean by that? We just mean that you cannot possibly resolve other people's grief. We cannot possibly do that, but you can find a way to get people to resolve their own grief. But that actually has a little bit of a consequence, and that is by when you hear people pitying themselves and constantly pitying themselves, by leadership demands that you should not go down that route with them. So those are my 3 points very quickly for leaders. When it comes to teams, let's say, for example, as you reflect on your own leadership style, you may recognize ways in which exhibiting these behaviors will be quite challenging to you, because some of us are not used to exhibiting such behaviors. We are used to behaving in a very normal way. But you may even worry that this isn't me. I can't behave like this. But while some leaders may be in very, very careful about how they use their language and how they deliver their their counseling sessions to their staff and to their employees, these are skills like any other. It can be learned. But indeed, again, the pandemic has actually uncovered such skills for us and has shown us how we should act differently and not act within, the status quo. So take, for example, you have a member of staff who has been sat down and told, well, we all know that in London, bonus time is approaching, bonus time, but he's been sat down and he's been told, yes, bonus time is approaching. But in view of that, I would like to share some feedback with you. This has happened through this 360-degree feedback that has come right through the organization. And it's quite negative. But I have to share it with you. I also need to share with you that budgets have all been slashed. So you can no longer go ahead with that project that you've been working on for so long. And you obviously know that with COVID, we cannot pay any bonuses. So I need you to understand that. But there is a way, again, that we manage our people and we manage our staff. All of you must have heard this quote that, in the forces of fate that bear down on man and threaten to break him also have the capacity to ennoble him. We've all heard these great quotes. But when people are dealing with such difficult circumstances, and on top of that, they get such painful news, what do? Do we rescue them by saying, you're terrific, you're unbelievable, you're just amazing? Do we say that? Or do we just run and say, we're just going to block this out and it's not our business? The answer is we do neither. We sit down with them and we address the problem. We invite them to talk about their feelings and their problems, and we give their problem a name. We also share our own stories because all of us have past experiences of going through the same thing. We've all received negative feedback in one way or the other. We've all been told you're not going to get a bonus this year. We've all been told that budgets are being slashed. But the idea is to sit down with these people and allow them to talk, allow them to speak. Now, one of the ways we can do that is to say to them, it sounds like you feel very, very disappointed, don't you? And allow the person to agree, to disagree, or to correct you. And that is where the magic begins. And probably they'll turn around and say, I'm not disappointed. I just feel totally betrayed and undervalued by this organization. I'm angry, of course. I'm hurt, but I'm going to fight and I'm going to show people what I am capable of. Once you elicit this pain and these problems, you will see that the person will come alive because you have actually allowed them to figure out the problem, and you haven't been the person saying, I'll tell you what the problem is. So the idea is that at that point in time, you will often find people who will criticize themselves. I'm just stupid. I've never been able to get a proper bonus. My boss has never liked me. I'm just not creative at all. But the idea is to suppress that critic and to involve the desire or this self-coach that many organizations are calling it, and allow that self-coach to come alive. Let them realize that I need to work harder, maybe. Maybe I haven't done enough. Maybe I perceive people differently, and I need to take this feedback on board and change. I need to invest in a coach or a mentor to help me to do that. And when we take them through this process of questioning, the psychological process, you again ask a question. This really does matter to you, doesn't it? This project that you've been working on? And they say, well, how will you feel if you did nothing and you just took this feedback home and you just brooded over it and you hurt over it and you let it settle within you and you believed it and you consumed it? Or how would you feel if we did the same project and we put it into our plan for next year, next quarter, next year? But most importantly, what do you think you can do to make this project happen? Give me 3 points that you can do to make it happen. When we do this, it is a highly powerful process that we are taking an employee through. And the third point, the third part of the presentation very quickly, is to talk about we as individuals and why isolation fuels depression. Now, many of us are not isolated. We are continuously talking to people. We are continuously on virtual meetings, but our teams are. Many of our friends are, our families are, and actually our teams are affected by what their families are going through. So the questions to be asked are, tell me some of the symptoms that you're facing. Do you feel very low? Do you feel like you want to curl up and never get up? Do you feel that, I want to do something, but I don't even know where to start? Do you wake up and are you tearful? These are the kind of questions that you should ask. Can you hear me? Hello?
Yes, Gillian.
We can hear you very well.
Yes,
I
we
had
can
somebody, sign to me that they couldn't hear me. That's all right. Thank you. I'll just continue. It's 1 minute more. So some of the tips that can help with why isolation fuels depression, and as you can see, I've done a talk about this in quite a few organizations, is obviously to talk to people, but many of us do that. Many of us think that our emotions will trigger the motion and we'll get up and go, but actually it's the other way around. Our motion triggers our emotions. So irrespective of how bad we are feeling and how down we are feeling and how distressed we are feeling, we need to get our bodies moving because it's motion that triggers emotion. Volunteer your services. Do you know, I did a great talk the other day where it is proved that just volunteering, and you can go to my YouTube and find it, just by volunteering, it is equivalent, one volunteer session is equivalent to going to the gym 6 times just by you volunteering. And this is how important it is to educate employees and educate the people you're with about these psychological benefits that you will get, so you don't have to feel isolated. We all know about food, we all know about talking to people, we all know about socializing, but a lot of that has been stopped and cut down and cut down and cut down even further. So this is what I'd like to leave you with. And as I said, in the interest of time, I've cut my presentation very short, and I'd like to just leave it and to our chair for the day to open the group discussion. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Gillian.